Hi folks, I hope as I'm recording this that you, like me, have come through the storm with still having power. It's a miracle. My husband and I spent 2 days buying firewood and supplies and stocking up for Armageddon, and we're okay, thankfully. I'm going to record this now. It is very early in the morning, but my husband is trapped in the city for the next 3 days, and the 6-year-old is asleep. So I'm trying to record this before he gets up. Okay, I want to talk about something that used to be in the textbook. It was chapter 3. It's called The Struggles of the Humanities, and it had to do with artists and the issues they've faced throughout history, the things they still deal with today, which I think is important. We're talking about art. I think there should be some information about the people who create it. And then in the next edition of the book, they moved it to chapter 15 and then added 16 to put freedom in. And then the next edition of the book, they made chapter 15 about nature and just took it out entirely. Still not sure what their thought process was on that. But I think it's important, maybe because I have been an artist my whole life. I've been acting since I was 6, and I, play music and all the other kinds of things. So I think it's important what artists do. And I'm also going to post this for my seated class because I got a feeling we are not having class tomorrow. And this is what we were going to talk about before the quiz. Okay, so I've got a list here. I'm going to try not to beleaguer it too much, but at some of the things I've got a few stories I want to include, but I'm just going to kind of go through my list. So the first thing I want to talk about is the role of artists in history. First of all, the main thing to know is that for most of history, artists were just volunteer. When they would do plays in ancient Greece, it was just volunteers, people from the community. The rich people, it was their duty to pay for it. People would volunteer to be in them. It was nothing that people made a living at. Even through the Middle Ages, when they would do the big cycle plays where each guild would take a part of the Bible and tell the story, and it would start in the morning, go all the way through the afternoon, to dark, and I'll tell you more about that when we get to theater. It was just volunteers because there was no such thing as a professional actor. You did have minstrels that would kind of go around playing music and telling stories, but that was about it, really. It takes until the Renaissance when you have people who are painters full-time. Shakespeare's era, the Elizabethan era, is the first time you see actors who are professionals. So through most of history, they were volunteer. A lot of it, of course, revolving around religion, because as we've said before, the purpose of art through most of history has been for religious worship. And today, a lot of artists are volunteer today, too. I've got a lot of friends whose shows were canceled this weekend because of snow, and they were doing them pretty much for free or for, maybe $20 a show or something like that. So that is still the case today. We know that with, say, the Screen Actors Guild, which is for television and film actors, 10% of the guild is working as an actor at any given time, and the other 90% are working in offices, driving cabs, waiting tables, whatever, hoping to get an acting job. And that's just the ones who've made it into the guild, not the ones who are still trying to get in there. So, artists can be professional today, but it's not going to happen for everybody. The other thing to know is that because they were volunteer, or because they were not very respected, artists through most of history have been considered very low class. I will give you an example. There's a playwright from France named Molière, who I would say is the Shakespeare of French theater. His plays are hilarious and sort of biting satire, social commentary, and like Shakespeare, people take them and set them in all different time periods and, change them around and all that kind of stuff as far as where they are to make different points with them. They're great plays. He founded what is now the National Theatre of France, and I'm talking about Molière was, a long time ago, and the theater that he made is now the National Theatre of France. He's very important. He was also an actor in a lot of his plays. My favorite story about him is that he was playing the lead in one of his plays, finished his last line, walked off stage, dropped dead. As an actor, I appreciate that. Yeah, he died, but he finished the show. Anyway, when he died, he was not allowed a Christian burial because artists were so distasteful. And now I'm realizing it's 5:30 in the morning. I left out the important part of the story. His name was Jean-Baptiste Poquelin. His father was a furniture builder for King Louis the whatever. Okay, so he grew up in the court. He wasn't nobility, but all his friends were nobles. He grew up very rich, very well respected, and when he decided to go into theater, he had to change his name, which he changed it to just Molière, like Madonna or Prince or something. And so his family would not be disgraced by what he had done. So there you go. There's a lot of people who think Shakespeare was not a real guy named Shakespeare. And the biggest contender, I would say, and I think it's a really good chance it was him, was a guy named Edward de Vere, who was the 17th Earl of Oxford, and he had to write under a pseudonym because it was not proper for a cousin of the Queen and nobility to be involved in theater. So there you go. I don't think that's the case today. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who wouldn't want their children going into art because they think they're not going to make any money, but I don't think it's because they think they would be low-class, horrible people, you know. When women finally start getting on stage, which isn't until after Shakespeare's time, they're considered pretty much no better than prostitutes. That's the social level that they are at. So that tells you something. Some other things that artists have had to deal with, and this goes since the beginning of time, is censorship. And, you know, we could have a very long conversation about that going on today, but it goes all the way back. There was a well, we only have 4 playwrights from ancient Greece. We know there were tons of them, but we only have scripts from 4 of them. And Sophocles wrote a play called Medea. Not Tyler Perry Medea, very different. Medea was a story where, if you are familiar with the idea of Jason and the Argonauts, where they go in search of the Golden Fleece and all that good stuff, well, on that, Jason meets Medea, who's like the princess of this barbaric land, and she's beautiful, and she can do magic and all this, and he marries her and brings her back to Greece. They have 2 children, and then he gets an opportunity to marry the princess there in his homeland. So he tells Medea he's going to dump her and try to get the princess to adopt their 2 kids, and Medea is not really happy about that. So she sends a poisoned robe and crown to the princess by the kids. They don't know what they're taking. She just says, here, take these gifts to your new mommy. And she puts on the robe and the crown streams fire down her body, the robe sticks to her, so when she tries to take it off like it's peeling her flesh off, she's screaming in agony. Her dad, the king, runs in, he's trying to help her, and when he touches her, he sticks to the robe, and they both die in a horrible flesh-mangling, burning death. Yeah, it's disgusting. Don't worry, in Greek plays they couldn't show you that, so like it happens off stage and then a messenger comes in and delivers a really long monologue about how nasty it was. But anyway, so she kills them. But she's not done torturing Jason yet. Then she kills her children to punish him. And so normal Greek theater practice would tell you that she needed to die. Because in Greek theater, good people get rewarded, bad people need to be punished by the gods. Well, the way Sophocles wrote it, the Apollo, the sun god, comes on down with a chariot. She puts the dead bodies of her sons on it. She gets on. He flies, they fly off, and she never is punished for what she's done. This did not go over well because it didn't fit the standard, right? So much so that Aristophanes, who's the only comedic Greek playwright we have, wrote an entire play about how Sophocles was going to burn in hell for all eternity for writing that ending to that play. So there you go. We still have censorship today. We still have People want to ban Harry Potter because they think it's satanic, which if you've read or watched Harry Potter, it's about the most wholesome, least satanic thing in the world. People want to ban Huck Finn because it says the N-word. I am in no way condoning the N-word. But he didn't write it in there because he thought it was a good thing. He wrote it in there because he wanted to make people confront how horrible and degrading a thing slavery was. But people think, oh, if you show them, like people think Juno, which is a great movie, is going to make teenage girls want to go out and get pregnant. I don't think that movie's glorifying teenage pregnancy. It looks pretty rough to me. So, we still have plenty of that today. And, like I say, we could talk for a long time about where you draw that line. A couple of terms that fit into this are the idea of blasphemy, that people don't like it when religious stuff is mocked or written about. And that's been going on since, the beginning of art. Stereotypes. People often accuse artists of using stereotypes that don't create real humanity, that just sort of create stereotypical flat characters that are prejudicial and that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of reasons people want to ban art, but that's a few of them. Mental health issues are something artists have had to deal with through a lot of history. Artists tend to be more emotional, more sensitive to things going on around them and in the world. They're just different. They look at the world differently. That's why they're artists. I mean, the best, the most famous story of that is probably Vincent van Gogh, who cut off his own ear and sent it to a woman because he thought that would make her fall in love with him. Not a real good thought process there. He suffered with depression and mental health issues his entire very short life. There's debate about whether he killed himself or it was an accident. Who knows? But he didn't live to paint for a nice, full, long life, and most of it was very tortured. Which brings to mind a clip that I'm going to put in your cool stuff folder this week. But anyway, and, that still goes on today. Look at Heath Ledger, who was so disturbed by the character he had created in the Batman movie, which is brilliant, but it was such a dark place that he went to that he was having to take sleeping pills and stuff just to shut his brain off. He didn't try to kill himself. He just was trying to, stop the mental wheels turning and accidentally overdosed. So, it still happens today. And then the last thing I'll talk about, which has also been an issue throughout time, is artists, whoever's paying for their art, wanting to control what they do. Thinking, I hold the purse strings, so I get to tell you how to do it. And that's gone on in Shakespeare's time. Before that, it's ubiquitous throughout art history that your patron or your whatever. Today, artists, musicians feel like they can't branch out and do different things because the people who liked their first album are not going to like the second one if they don't do the same thing. So they feel like they're constrained by that. Artists, people do that all the time. And then I will end with this story because it's one of my favorites. And it really depicts, especially in the movie industry, how he who controls the purse strings controls the product, the end product. And that is, I know some of you probably know Kevin Smith. He does all the Jay and Silent Bob movies, Dogma, Chasing Amy, Mallrats, all of these kind of things. I love his movies. I think they're hilarious. So he's also a big comic book guy. And a few years ago, it's been more than a few years ago now, he was hired to write a Superman script. That process ended in the movie that came out a while back with, what's his name? Brandon Routh, is that his name? Who played Superman, and Kevin Spacey was Lex Luthor. I don't know. I watched the first 10 minutes of it and I was like, I'm out. I can't handle this. It's horrible. That was not Kevin Spacey's script, by the way. So what happened was he was hired to write this script, and he was really excited. And the producer was this rich guy from New York who'd never been involved in a movie before ever. And he was very determined that Kevin Smith was going to put a giant spider in this movie for Superman to fight. Don't know why. Kevin Smith didn't know why. Dude didn't have a good reason why. He just wanted Kevin Smith to come up with a reason. He just wanted to see a giant spider. Well, Kevin Smith refused and had to part ways from the project. So, when you see that movie, I'm assuming it does not have a giant spider in it. Like I said, I didn't make it all the way through. So somebody talked sense into the dude. But a few years later, Kevin Smith is watching The Wild Wild West with Kevin Kline, who I love, and Will Smith, who I love. It's an alright movie. Kenneth Branagh's the bad guy. He's amazing. And in that, Kenneth Branagh has a giant mechanical spider that they have to fight. Kevin Smith looks at the credits. That dude was a producer. So he finally got his big giant spider. Just a mechanical one. Because Wild Wild West was not a supernatural movie to have a giant spider. So there you go. It happens all the time. Endings are changed. People are recast just because the people who have the money want it that way. Being an artist can be quite lucrative for a very small portion of people, but for most people, it's a labor of love. You know, you do it because you really enjoy it, and you may or may not ever get any recognition or financial reward out of it, but you have to do it. It's just your passion, and you have to do it. So, I hope this gives you a very quick rundown of the role of artists in society, how they've been treated, that kind of thing. A few of these terms might show up on a quiz. Just saying. But I'm going to stop now. I'm playing with fire because the kid could be up at any minute. I hope you all are safe and warm and have power. And for my seated students I'm posting this for, I hope I see you sometime soon. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your snow break.